Do you remember this piece? Since I've had it in my booth, I've noticed several issues with it. One, quite simply, the style. What was I thinking? This style of the legs that I paired with the concrete top doesn't work at all. I guess I just had tunnel vision on trying to make use of leftover pieces from previous projects, knowing that I have to try to sort and get rid of all of the materials that I have in my home before we move. Second issue is a safety concern. I've had this in my booth for several months now, and I've had to move it around several times based on other pieces selling and being replaced with new pieces and just trying to make the booth work. And I can tell that these legs are just starting to break down. They're not really holding up to the weight of that concrete slab, which is very, very heavy. So stick with me if you're curious about what my new plan is for this old slab top. Hi, my name is Packy, creator of Pack Rat's Shack. I upcycle furniture, build out of pallet wood, finish interior spaces, and have a vendor booth for my creations. Welcome to my world. This is a section of the video from this piece's original debut. It was a conglomeration of other pieces that I got ready for my new booth space. I can't believe no one left a comment about how I paired these legs with this slab that I did an acrylic pour on. I mean, I always knew it was a mix of style, and I guess at the time I was just thinking eclectic. But even eclectic style needs to look intentional, and this just looks like a collision. I can't believe you guys didn't say something about this. Watch what I do with it, and let's see if it will become anything somebody would want to buy. Okay, so let's build this slab top a new intentional base. Of course, I am still going to use what I have on hand. These legs, you may remember, they were on my craft table that I removed from the kitty room refinish. Here I'm cutting them to the proper height I will need for the coffee table height. Yes, you heard it. I'm changing the height of the table while I'm making this base. It will now be a coffee table. And yeah, it's kind of a lot for my poor old saw to take. It's starting to smoke. But here are 3 cut to size, and I need to wait for the 4th leg to dry. I had to reposition the foot because the hole in which the foot screwed into the leg was not exactly straight, therefore you could never screw it in completely tight and flush to the bottom of the leg. So therefore I had to straighten out the hole, which left it a little too gappy, so I went ahead and glued and clamped it into place as well. Yeah, for some of you who are noticing the blue taped box on the floor, well, that's simulating the size of my coffee table top. I'm using that to get all my measurements for the lengths of the frame. I am just coming up with a plan as I go. I decide here that I need to cut out the inside corners of my legs before taking my frame measurements. I want to leave an inch of reveal on the 2 front sides of the legs. After I draw out the chunk that I'm wanting to remove, I use my multi-tool to cut it out. But the blade is not really long enough to get all the way to the back, so I'm having to remove chunk by chunk until I can get it to the depth I want. These cutouts weren't perfect, but I did get better as I went along. Now I can go ahead and cut my lengths and depths of the frame. After I get my two lengths cut, I use them to figure the depth measurement. Of course, I am also scuff sanding all my pieces as I go to prep them for painting. After I get my measurements, accounting for the pieces already taking up some of the depth, I need to also take off another inch for the other leg's 1-inch reveal on the front edge. This will all make sense as you see it get put together. Yeah, I believe this leg has been in the clamps for long enough. It's been there for several hours, and I think it's safe to say we can go ahead and cut it to size and get it caught up to the project. And this is how all of the pieces go together. Now for assembly, I'm making sure the lengths are squared to the legs before I secure them with screws. I pre-drill so there will be no splitting of wood to keep the joints as strong as possible. I also countersink because I just think it's a better finish, even though everything will be on the inside corner and not even seen. I have to make some adjustments to the cutouts that I made in the legs in order to make sure I get the legs square to the lengths of the frame. Now for the depths, or in this case the side lengths. I will pocket screw them into place, pulling the front and back together. But usually I'm using thinner pieces in my Craig jig that go all the way to the bottom of the press. These wide pieces don't allow the press to go all the way down, and we don't need the screws to be 6 inches from the end. So I go ahead and measure how much wood sticks below the press when using the 1x that I typically use. There is 3/4 of an inch below the press of exposed wood. So then I put a scrap piece of wood into the base of the jig, so when I clamp these chunkier pieces in, I'm left with that 3/4 inch below. When I get done with all the pocket holes, I check how they line up in the assembly. Unfortunately, it looks like some of the pocket screws may go right where I already have a screw. So I toy with the idea of turning my boards around, but I really don't like how that would look and expose the pocket holes on the outside of my project. So I go ahead with my original plan and hope they miss each other. And they all do, so it worked out. But after I moved the base into place to see how it fits into the tabletop, which is perfect by the way, I then noticed that one leg is loose. Well, this is really because the legs are only anchored to the lengths of the frame, not on the sides or the depths of the frame. So I go ahead and put screws in between the pocket holes so that I can secure the legs to the depth side of the frame. It worked. The leg feels real solid now. So I go ahead and do this with the other 3 legs even though they were not loose. I figured, well, if one of them are loose, then the other ones might loosen up over time. But now each leg is secured to the frame on both corners of the frame. I also noticed on this same leg that the foot was also loose. It just took a couple more turns and everything was nice and tight. Then I go ahead and clean up the piece. I need to get all of the debris that I've created off of it, as well as any overfilled wood filler. I start out by using what's left of my Krylon chalk paint and tricorn black. I know that I don't have enough to complete the project, but I know it'll also take several coats, especially on the white legs. So I know there's enough to at least get a good base going. I ran out of the Krylon 3/4 of the way through the second coat, and I went ahead and finished the project with Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint in Anchor Black. I knew I needed to do a third coat anyway to get full coverage. Before the third coat, I do a light scuff sanding to knock off any debris. I was losing brush bristles like crazy with that last brush that I was using. Doing this scuff sanding also highlights any paint problems that might have been left in the previous coats. Here you can see a really good area of imperfection that I carefully cut away and smooth out with a razor knife and then sand it smooth the rest of the way. I also go ahead and pick out a different brush to use on this last coat in order to eliminate the problem of bristles falling out and being left behind. Also, you might find with chalk paints that it travels better across the piece when using a mister bottle to add moisture, especially in your second and third or any remaining coats. You can mist the piece while you're going along as well as your brush. Now we have a nice looking solid black coffee table base. And I apologize, I did forget to record while I was spraying the piece for protection. I use Minwax polyacrylic in the satin finish. And I always spray my pieces with several coats. After it's all dried from the polyacrylic, I go ahead and I add these little rubber pads to the top surface so that the tabletop slab has a nice grippy spot to set on. I also go ahead and put on the felt pads on the bottom for floor protection. Then it's just about getting this to my booth and switching it out from that antique base I tried to use. Didn't this turn out to be a much better fit? You can tell that the base was actually created intentionally for this top now. Sometimes when you have a struggle with selling a piece, you really got to internally search to figure out what your design problem or design flaw was. This piece was quite evident. Let's see how successful we are in selling this piece now. I still can't believe that nobody left comments about how horrible my choice was in initially pairing the antique legs with this concrete slab. I mean, that was a horrible choice. Horrible. For all of you who are still here with me watching, thank you for your view support. I greatly appreciate you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and even share my channel with your friends and family. Every view is needed and appreciated. And as always, until next time, stay safe out there.